Yep. You're a very grumpy boy. Well, hi there. This absolutely glorious snake is a bull snake. One of my absolute favorite snakes in the world for reasons I'll discuss here in a moment. And one of the most overlooked of all pet snakes. We discussed them almost 6 years ago along with other gopher snakes and their close relatives, the pine snakes, which are all in the genus Pituophis. A genus that I adore. I have 3 species and 4 different subspecies in this genus here at Clint's Reptile Room. But bull snakes are my favorites of them all. And the main reason for that is their size. Boas and pythons on occasion get too big. I've even got a couple of species here at the room that I would not want to have in my home simply because they're not safe to handle when you're alone. But to my knowledge, no colubrid snake has ever gotten too big. My favorite species of snakes, period, is the largest colubrid that I own. The bigger the better. And as you can see, bull snakes are impressively large. They're also impressively delightful, despite being potentially a little talkative. Bull snakes have a reputation for being scary, and they look a little scary, and they can act and sound very scary. But it's all an act. They are generally very uninclined to bite. And they come in a glorious rainbow of colors, though I absolutely adore them just the way they look in nature. And that's a big part of the draw of these snakes for me. I grew up in Colorado, and bull snakes were the coolest snakes that I would see on a somewhat regular basis. So they have a very special place in my heart. But are they good pets? That is the question. And are they the best pet snake for you? And to help you figure this out, we'll have to give the bull snake a score based on our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. When it comes to handleability, we give the bull snake a score of 4 out of 5. In the past, we gave the genus Pituophis, the genus to which these snakes belong, also a score of 4 out of 5. The reality is that these snakes have a bit of a reputation for being, well, quite grumpy. And I think that a member of this genus is the only snake that I've gotten because it was too bitey for its original owners. But I should add that I don't have a snake more trustworthy today than that snake. But I don't doubt that many people keep these snakes and can't get them to calm down. Not because these snakes are impossible to tame, but because they're so intimidating. This is my bull snake Skeletor. She was produced by my good friend Doug, who works here at Clint's Reptile Room, and I just love her so much. Her name is Skeletor because, well, she has Skeletor's face on her neck. Doug gave me Pick the Clutch, and I picked her because she had this cool skeleton face. And after a while I was like, I've seen this face before. Whose face is this? That's Skeletor's face. But I didn't know what her personality was going to be like. This is her mom, Yzma, the snake I've been handling most of this video. She is a delightful snake. But Kronk, Skeletor's dad, unlike his namesake, is a very grumpy snake indeed. And I'll show him to you here in a minute. But the reality is, I wasn't too worried either way, because snakes really aren't mean. They're just sometimes scared, or hungry in the case of king snakes or retics. But like I said, I was once given a very grumpy Pituophis snake, and he is now one of my most trustworthy. We actually made a whole video about how we got him from grumpy to nice. But the important thing about bull snakes is that they're pretty much all talk. But man, can they talk. They rattle their tails. Even a well-socialized bull snake will rattle at you from time to time. They don't have a rattle like a rattlesnake, but in dry leaves and such, it really does sound very similar. It probably won't be as loud in your enclosure, but you will hear it, or at least see it rattling. And just because they're rattling, that doesn't mean that they're going to bite. But it does indicate that they're a bit uncomfortable with the situation. And that isn't that unusual. Lots of snakes do it. Corn snakes rattle, but with bull snakes, this is just the beginning. Because they also hiss loudly with open mouths. And they have a special modification to their glottis that allows them to make a particularly loud and intimidating noise that also sounds a lot like a rattlesnake rattle. And while a well-socialized bull snake will not do this at you, it will make this sound from time to time, especially when you're feeding it, or at least when you're attempting to feed it. Rodents, as it turns out, are very dangerous to a snake if that snake isn't in the mood to eat one. And they will do their best to scare it off. And their best is just better than the best of most snakes, because this isn't even the end of their defensive display. A really grumpy bull snake will stand up really tall, like a rattlesnake, flatten its head, and make all kinds of sounds. It has to be one of the most impressive displays that any totally harmless snake can make. And we might just see that here in a minute. Now, they can bite, but their bark is much, much, much worse than their bite. And in my experience, at least so far in my life, they like to maintain that mystery. Despite being given a particularly bitey member of the genus, I have never been bitten by a Pituophis snake. Though again, that might change here in a minute. But I gotta be honest, I was really tempted to give these a 5 for handleability. I mean, when people first arrive at an event at Clint's Reptile Room, I get out mostly a bunch of ball pythons. They're the perfect snake for people that are not used to handling snakes to handle first. They're big enough that if people are a bit rough, they won't get hurt, but small enough that they're not difficult or dangerous to handle, and they're not going to bite or try to run away. It just doesn't get any easier or safer to handle a snake. And in addition to an army of ball pythons, I get out 1 or 2 members of this genus. And when I go to get a snake to hold for my personal enjoyment, this is probably the snake species that I go to the most often. They're just about as easy to get out and handle as a ball python, but I would say considerably more engaging. And they're much less likely to pee on you than my other 2 favorites. So like I said, I am tempted to give them a 5, but that would only be if you don't let their display prevent you from building trust with your snake. So 4 it is. But with that said, let's see if I can have a good interaction with Kronk, and I'll try to talk to you a little bit about how I build trust with grumpy snakes. Hey! If you're as passionate about quality reptile care as we are, then you'll love Husbandry Pro. Husbandry Pro is a comprehensive care tool that keeps track of feeding, shedding, and health records all in one place. You can access it anytime, anywhere, and even create custom labels and QR codes for each animal. So it's perfect for staying organized and sharing records with vets, other keepers, or buyers. And with push notifications, you'll never miss a feeding or checkup. We have a special offer just for Clint's Reptiles fans. Click the link below and use the code CLINTS60 for a 60-day free trial. That's CLINTS60 for 60 days free. Give it a try and level up your reptile care. Thank you, Husbandry Pro, for sponsoring this video. Okay, so this is Kronk. He is a beautiful albino red bull snake. And like I said, he is Skeletor's grumpy dad. He, unlike Yzma, has not been handled very much at all. And a lot of that is because he has a very defensive personality. Apparently we don't know how likely he is to bite exactly. But I'm going to show you. So I do have a snake hook here. I use a snake hook quite a bit when I interact with my snakes. Not usually actually to pick them up, but just to pet them so that they can know that I'm handling them, not feeding them. Now, I don't know that Kronk has been tap trained at all, but this is a very, very good tool when interacting with a grumpy snake in the wild or a pet. Obviously, I normally probably wouldn't sit where he's going to strike out right at my face, but here we are. So let's see how much Kronk is all talk, or if he wants to back up his bark with his bite. And if we can get him to mellow out a little bit with handling. So this could get exciting. Buckle up. Okay, so one thing, this is the case in nature too. If you're flipping something over that might have a grumpy snake under it, flip it so that the object stays between you and the grumpy snake. This is particularly important if it's venomous. Then I'm going to peel that back. So far he's being really good. I've heard it's the moment that he feels flesh touch him that he gets a little more defensive, and like I said, I'm in a very precarious position. So I'm going to use the snake hook just a little bit, just to begin interacting with him. I'm going to scoop his front just a little bit, and then I'm going to go at him from below. I've talked about this a lot, but no predator touches animals generally from below and gently. And so that's how I'm going to start this interaction. There's that hiss. I told you. It's an intimidating hiss. Hey, buddy. Yep, you're a very serious snake. But I'm hoping you're all talk. Hey, Kronk. Hey, Kronk. Hey, buddy. I know. I might get bitten in the face, but you see how he stands up? He's not even tail rattling right now. He's relying 100% on that hiss. But that hiss honestly sounds more like a rattlesnake's rattle than the rattling does. Hey, Cronky. Hey, buddy. Yep. You're a very grumpy boy. You're a very grumpy boy. So my current bite count for life is 6. I've been bitten by 6 snakes. Could be 7 here in a second. Because I'm going to go away from the hook. Because he does seem like he's all talk. But he could change his attitude here in a second. Hey, Kronk, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, you're a good boy. You're a good boy. Everything's from below. Everything's gentle. Hi, Kronky. Boy, Kronky. How you doing, pal? Hi, bud. Hi, bud. Hi, yeah, you're okay. So something I've discovered about snakes for years, and I can't quite explain, is if I bring him to my other hand, he's going to be pretty good about it. If I try to bring my other hand to him, it's much more startling. Oh, you're a good boy, Kronk. You're a good boy, Kronk, yeah. Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? I like you. You're pretty. You're a pretty snake. Yeah, you're not so bad, are you, Kronk? Here, now he's getting a chance to run. Oh, good boy. Anyway, if you can get past being intimidated by their threat display, there's no reason you can't have a very good interaction with pretty much any of these guys. Like I said, their bite is not really serious. Even at this size, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And so, they're much scarier in the way that they talk than the way that they act. Oh, yes. You're a good boy, Kronk. Are you a good boy, Kronkadoodle-doo? When it comes to care, we give the bull snake a score of 5 out of 5. And while I have a lot of experience with bull snakes, I don't have quite as much as my friend Doug. Plus, Doug is one of the raddest people I know. So Doug, thank you so much for being here.
You're absolutely welcome.
And thank you for bringing Yzma and Kronk. They are such glorious snakes.
They are.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about care for bull snakes. And let's start with an enclosure. Okay. I know there's a lot of good options when it comes to housing a bull snake. What are some of your favorites?
Well, I love a PVC enclosure if you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
They just give you it's easy to control the temperature gradient and give them everything they need. It's easy to keep heated and
mother and daughter, they haven't seen each other for a long time.
Yeah, that's what I would go with to start.
I think there's some really good. I love like the Toad Ranch enclosures. No matter what you get, you're going to need a good lid on it. That's going to be really important. PVC, obviously, that's not going to be a problem. But if you try to do something like an aquarium, that's much more doable, I think, than it is for things like ball pythons, because temperature and humidity are much easier to maintain properly for a bull snake than a lot of tropical and subtropical snakes.
Yeah.
But they are escape artists. If there's something they can push through, they're very, very strong. Their head is very burly, so they can force it through some surprisingly small gaps. What kind of substrates do you usually prefer for a bull snake?
I use aspen. I love aspen for all my colubrids, but there's a lot of options out there. A lot of people like to use planting soil, but it can't have any chemicals in it. It's got to be clean that way. You got to be cautious with that because you can over humidify an enclosure. You can get too much water in there. They don't need a lot of humidity, like other more tropical species do. And some people love to just use newspaper because it's simple to change out. You can clean it with ease.
So again, a lot of options. You know, this is a snake that actually comes from a lot of different parts of the country, and some of them are very deserty. Some of them have a little bit higher humidity. You know, this isn't. You're not going to set it up like something from Florida,
right?
Though there are pits from that area, but there's a lot of good ways to do it. And I'm a big fan of aspen shavings myself as well. Okay, so in addition to the enclosure and substrate, like what else are you going to need to keep a bull snake properly?
Well, you're going to want, of course, water. You're going to need to make sure they have a water bowl. I've always kept a water bowl big enough for them to fit in until they get this size. Then it just doesn't make sense for her, but still a good-sized bowl. I've got hides all over her enclosure. She's got plenty of space. Right now, her enclosure is a 4x2, although with her size, I would go bigger because she'll use it all. She's very active. So I'm working on a 6-foot enclosure for her. And there will be plenty of hides and other enrichment in there.
That's a really good thing to point out too. These are very diurnally active snakes, which, you know, a lot of snakes are not that fun to watch in their enclosure, at least during the day. These guys are great. I mean, that's one of the things I loved about them in Colorado is you would just, like, I grew up by a lake, and you just find them just stretched out across the trail, middle of the day all the time. And they're moving, but they're not moving fast, and your presence doesn't change their plans. They're so confident.
So I would, obviously you need some heat for them. They don't need a lot of heat. High 70s Fahrenheit is plenty. What is that, 25, 26 degrees Celsius? It's not a lot. A lot of people keep them in their home. They just keep the room heated, and then they don't have to worry about the enclosures.
Yep. Which you can't do that with most tropical snakes, unless you want to keep it really heated.
Really hot. So that's some real basic stuff.
Okay, so now there is one thing. So a lot of this, is stuff I have experience with too. I have never attempted to breed these. I've actually never had more than one bull snake at a time. Okay. And I love this girl, but obviously you've had success breeding them. Talk to me a little bit about brumation and breeding of bull snakes for people who might be interested in that.
Okay, they're real easy to breed. When I go home, she's had her last meal for the year, for this winter. So in a couple of weeks, when she's had about 3 weeks after her last meal, I'm going to cool her down. The room she's in right now cools down to about 60 degrees in the winter time, and that's plenty for a brumation for a bull snake. You can go colder, a lot of people do, but about 60 degrees for 2.5, 3 months, and then I'll warm her up, start feeding her, and once she starts eating, and you kind of see some signs, but in the spring I'll introduce her to Kronk again. Should I decide to breed them one more year, and we'll get, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of how to say it. They'll lock. The first time I did it, Kronk chased her around all night. I could hear him banging around in that enclosure. It was really kind of funny. But after a few days of that, we ended up with 12 eggs the first year. This last year, she gave me 16 good eggs. So
they're so wonderful. And if people are looking for one, they can go to you, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
We'll have links down in the description if you want a sibling of Skeletors and an offspring of Yzmas. There should be more here in a few months.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Doug, for being here and for bringing such awesome snakes. And for Skeletor. I can't thank you enough for that. When it comes to hardiness, we give the bull snake a score of 5 out of 5. This whole genus is just solid. The only 2 wild-caught snakes in the room are Great Basin gopher snakes, which are a different subspecies of the same species as bull snakes. And I only bring this up because one of them is the animal that I've had the longest, longer than my children. And the other is one that I've only had for a couple of years, but it's because we got a call in December about a dying snake in a parking lot of a nearby business. And when I showed up, I found an emaciated, barely moving snake with spider webs all over her face on the verge of death. And how's she doing now? Great. She's just an absolute star. It's honestly hard to think of a hardier snake. They are certainly hardier than most tropical snakes. I mean, they're honestly rock solid. Okay, so to this point, the bull snake has an almost perfect score. I think tied with the best snake we've ever reviewed. Honestly, it's hard to say that this isn't as close to a perfect pet as there is. The biggest problem with them is just that they are massively underrated. Though I think my friends Emily and Ed from Snake Discovery have done something to elevate their status to some degree. But not that many people work with bull snakes, despite their being amazing pets with many really exciting morphs available. If you know where to go, it isn't that hard to get one. But you aren't going to find them at most pet shops, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if you went to an expo and didn't see a single one. So we give them a 3 out of 5 for availability. But if you are looking for one, well, you can get one from Doug. Also Jason Nelson of Envy Reptile. So there are good breeders producing them regularly, but you might need to have one shipped because there may not be a breeder anywhere near you. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the bull snake a score of 4 out of 5. You see, there are 2 reasons that an animal might be rare. It's either hard to get because it's in great demand, or it's hard to get because there is little demand, and therefore nobody is working with them. The former leads to high costs. The latter means you can get them for cheap, if you can get them. And this is a situation of scarcity due to lack of demand, which is insane. This is one of the coolest snakes on the planet and a great pet. Now, this could be a situation like Emerald Tree Skinks where our video totally changes the market. But if Snake Discovery hasn't been able to change it, I doubt this video will change things much. So now, and I expect in the future, the snake itself will be very reasonably priced. You may actually spend more on shipping than on the actual snake. The enclosure, heating, water bowl, hides and such will be bigger and therefore a little bit more expensive than for many smaller snakes, which is why it only gets a 4, but even that won't be too extreme. An enclosure from Toad Ranch, which are really reasonably priced actually, would be excellent for a bull snake. And it's almost impossible to go too big. This is really not a very expensive animal to get or to keep, especially for how much it gives back. It just needs a fairly large enclosure for a snake because it's a fairly large and active snake. And of my 3 favorite snake species to hold, this one's definitely the most affordable. And this is why overall we give the bull snake a score of 4.2 out of 5, which is a dang good score for a big snake with a bad reputation that is somewhat hard to find. But the reality is that this is a snake that does not deserve its bad reputation. They are amazing. And while it isn't clearly the best pet snake on earth, it's certainly in the running for that title. I like them far more than our highest scoring snake of all time, the corn snake. A person could keep nothing but bull snakes and live a very happy life. If what you're looking for is an impressively large colubrid snake that is easy to care for and won't break the bank, then the bull snake just might be the best pet snake for you. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
I may work here, but I'm also a Patreon member because the benefits, the extra videos, the Patreon extras are amazing. There's a lot more content that you don't see, and the conversations are great. It's always worth it. It's worth every penny. Highly recommend it.
I'm a little disappointed that you named Skeletor and not Cusco or something. You know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know what the offspring of Yzma and Kronk should be. I don't really want to think too much about that. I think the last time Yzma could have had babies, Kronk wasn't born yet. Nor were Kronk's parents.